Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very, very well. As always, there is a ton of WWE news stories to get into today, so let's kick off and talk about some big signings when it comes to WWE in the corporate landscape. 3 big hires for WWE. Of course, the last few weeks have all been about people departing the company, whether it's on the independent contractor side, the talent side of things, on the roster, people getting released after WrestleMania, people from NXT getting released. Last week, of course, we had a lot of people in WWE HQ in Stamford, Connecticut get fired from their job. We had people around the world in the international offices, whether it was Japan, the United Kingdom, Los Angeles. So many people, unfortunately, were let go from their jobs last week or over the course of the last few weeks when it comes to WWE. WWE President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan has certainly been reshaping and remolding the WWE in his image. And certainly the corporate landscape of WWE appears to be changing at the moment. Well, WWE has announced 3 new corporate hires set to join the senior leadership team in WWE. Now, WWE has announced 3 new names will be joining their senior leadership team as the corporate structure in WWE continues to change every single week. Now, it was a big press release just released by WWE on their corporate website. WWE announced Jamie Horowitz, Samira Shah, and Matt Drew to join senior leadership team. WWE today announced 3 additions to the organization's senior leadership team. Joining the company will be Jamie Horowitz as Executive Vice President, Development and Digital, Samira Shah as General Counsel and Corporate Secretary, and Matt Drew as Senior Vice President, International. Now, they go and talk about all of these people's experience and all that kind of stuff. It's corporate jargon, so we'll skip that. What is interesting, though, about this corporate shake-up, if you will, not just obviously is these 3 hires, considering obviously the departures we've had over the course of the last few weeks, but WWE, when they announced the hire of Jamie Horowitz, there's a bit of controversy when it comes to this guy's name. Now, he's a successful but controversial name in the sports media landscape. He was the innovator behind First Take, among other shows, and a breather of life for Skip Bayless. But there is some controversy around his past. Horowitz has obviously had a tremendous amount of success during his career so far, and he was also the figurehead behind a big flop that was Fox Sports all-video rollout. But he also has a significant amount of workplace misconduct accusations against him. He was most recently at DAZN. Horowitz has been accused of several sexual harassment charges in 2017 while at Fox Sport, and he was fired because of those allegations. Now, as far as I'm aware, no charges or anything were filed, but certainly he was let go from his job at Fox Sports because of these allegations of sexual harassment against him in 2017. Now, he picked up the job at DAZN not long after, but it certainly is going to open up a topic of conversation when it comes to this guy. Look, WWE throughout the years, there have been horror stories, frankly, about workplace misconduct, a toxic environment. Certainly, WWE have their allegations and their dark history when it comes to things either from a talent point of view, the scandals in the 80s, whether it's the steroid trial, whether it's the Ring Boy scandals, and obviously over the course of the last few years, not so much maybe the WWE side of things, but we've seen with the Speaking Out movement, and we've seen with the Time's Up movement, all of these allegations of sexual misconduct finally are being raised, especially in the workplace, and we're finding all of these just horrible corporate environments for people to work in. And workplace culture, let's face it, has been a massive talking point for WWE for years. As I mentioned, they've had their scandals, a lot of them. And, the hiring of this Horowitz guy who, look, he's had success. You don't get to where you are without success. But it is marred by all of these accusations of harassment and controversial content strategies. It's going to be scrutinized. Certainly very scrutinized. I find it interesting that they're hiring a guy that was fired from Fox Sports because of these allegations against him. WWE they have a contract with Fox for SmackDown. They work with Fox. They work with Fox Sports previously when they had the WWE Backstage show. And no doubt at some point this year, SmackDown once again will air on Fox Sports like it always does in the autumn to winter months. Do you think Fox or someone, surely Fox would have reached out to WWE, go, seriously? I mean, I know it's not maybe our place to tell you who to hire, all that kind of stuff, but just telling you, we fired this guy because of allegations against him that weren't very good. And you're hiring him? Oof. I think also you have to look at it as, Lots of people lost their job. Lots of people lost their jobs over the course of the last few weeks. Good, hard-working people. Now, I'm not going to criticize WWE for that because, like I said before, business is business ultimately. This is nothing exclusive to WWE. These big corporations, publicly traded, billion-dollar organizations, all this kind of stuff. Look, it's business. And especially with the pandemic, things have changed in business over the course of the last 18 months or so, whether it's people getting made redundant or furloughed, working from home, the strategy of coming in the office, maybe not having to work from the office, working remotely. And some of these big corporations like WWE, if they can find an avenue to make themselves more money, regardless if that's product-based, whether that's investment-based, whether that's whatever, if they realize they can make more money, they will do it. They have realized that maybe their workforce was too bloated. They realized, wait a minute, over the course of the pandemic in the last 18 months, we had people furloughed, we had people fired and all this kind of stuff. We were still just as productive. And actually, if we were just as productive, maybe we don't think we need all of these people anymore. Maybe we don't need all of these employees anymore. That's what they're thinking in this scenario. That's why all of these people have been let go. And the influence that this Nick Khan guy has as the president of WWE, it's not just in title. This is big, significant changes that the guy is making. You're merging divisions, you're putting divisions together, you're firing people, you're reducing the staff and senior figures at international offices, which Nick Khan is now overseeing all of them, to closely align with the WWE Corporate HQ in Stamford, Connecticut. As I mentioned, they've pretty much merged the digital division with WWE Studios. And does that have is that a ramification of the Peacock deal? We don't know. But the senior people are being fired and then new senior people are being brought in. That to me is a very obvious demonstration of power by Nick Khan. He is reshaping the WWE in his image. Now, ultimately, this is still Vince McMahon's company. The guy has the majority voting power on the board. He has the final say-so. He is the chairman and CEO of the company. But Nick Khan is an incredibly powerful figure, and he's showing it. Because, like I said, he is molding WWE in his image at this point. When you get rid of senior figures, when you come into a company, get rid of senior figures and bring in your own, essentially, which is what he's doing. These hires are Nick Khan hires. This is the senior leadership team under Nick Khan. This is what he wants WWE to look like. And there have been lots of discussions recently, haven't there? When it comes to merging divisions together, firing people, bringing in a different structure, a new structure, people are saying, actually, are WWE sort of shaping themselves up to be sold? And I concur with lots of people here. I've heard a lot of people say within the next 4 to 5 years, it would be very surprising if WWE wasn't sold. Now, I know people will say, well, what does that look like? I don't know what that looks like, but I know they're already licensing their content to NBC Universal for Peacock. NBC Universal rather, in a few years' time might go, you know what, actually, instead of doing this licensing agreement where we license your content from what would be the WWE Network onto our Peacock streaming service, maybe it's just easier we just buy you. And I don't know how much it would cost, maybe certainly more than $1 billion. But in the same kind of vein that the UFC was sold a few years ago and everyone kind of remains in place, but you've got new owners, I could see something like that happening. Maybe, I don't know if Vince McMahon's alive when it happens, I don't know. But this is significant. All of this stuff that's happening behind the scenes in WWE in the corporate landscape at the moment is very significant. And like I said, for me, it just lines up with the feeling that, they're going to get sold, I think, at some point. I think throughout the entirety of the WWE's history, I've never felt that WWE was more close to being sold than they are right now. Is it going to happen immediately? I don't think so. But over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 years, maybe at the end of this NBC Universal Peacock deal that they have with WWE, maybe NBC Universal go, look, we're interested. Whether it's NBC Universal, it could be Disney. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Disney made an offer. And you worry about PG wrestling then. They say that WWE is the Disney of the sports entertainment world. Well, what if Disney buys them? They're not afraid. They'll spend the money. If they bought Fox, Fox Studios, if they bought Marvel, if they bought ESPN, all that kind of stuff, they'd love to bring WWE in-house. Disney want to buy everything. And maybe WWE realize this, and they're thinking, right, we need to change our structure over the course of the next couple of years. We need to merge departments, settle things together, get everything in-house, make sure we know where everything is, because we're going to be sold soon. And I think that's maybe a direction they could go in. So it's fascinating. It's certainly very interesting. Let's talk more about the wrestling side of things. Monday Night Raw. We did a reaction stream live last night, so be sure to check that out. And we spoke about this briefly here, so I won't dwell on it too much. But Jimmy Smith, of course, made his debut in the lead play-by-play role for Monday Night Raw last night. And he's received significant praise across social media for last night's commentary debut alongside Corey Graves and Byron Saxton. Now, the general consensus here when it comes to Jimmy Smith is that the fit is much better than Adnan Virk. Compared to the recent job by Adnan Virk, it would appear that Jimmy Smith is a much better suit and he's a much better fit. Now, it was noted before Raw that Smith gave a pre-show interview and talked about how he had been preparing for the role. He seemed to obviously to know many of the superstars' finishing moves and was more familiar with the product than Virk seemed to be. Smith took to Twitter after Raw and said that he had a blast and also praised the main event, which saw Drew McIntyre defeat Kofi Kingston to earn an opportunity at Hell in a Cell against Bobby Lashley. This is what Jimmy Smith had to say, quote, "Had a blast on Raw tonight. Amazing match between Drew McIntyre and Kofi Kingston. Tried my best to give it the energy it deserved." So, look, again, I won't dwell on it too much because we spoke about it at length on the Raw reaction stream last night, so be sure to check that out. But I thought he did an excellent job. And is he totally familiar with the product? I don't know. At points, I don't think he knew all of the moves, shall we say. And was he totally familiar with all the characters? I think he was familiar as you probably can be. He hasn't been under this WWE umbrella for long. But look, I think he did a good job. And I mentioned it on social media last night. When you bring passion and enthusiasm, that can overcome any lack of experience or knowledge that you have. And as long as you show the desire to learn and the desire to improve and the desire to learn all of this different stuff, I think the cliche is you can only make one at first impression ever. And I think he made a good one last night. His voice, I mentioned it last night, the first 30 seconds he was on camera and he was speaking about what was coming up on the show. Immediately I went, well, he's better than Adnan Virk already. And that's not because Adnan Virk did such a terrible job, which he didn't do a great job. I don't know if necessarily that's his fault. It just wasn't the right fit. But the guy's got the voice for it in Jimmy Smith. He has the voice for it. That combat sports MMA background just lends itself so much better to pro wrestling because this is what it is. Yes, it's a work. Yes, it's scripted, but come on. It's a worked combat sport environment. They're still wrestling. They're still beating the hell out of each other. And I don't think a baseball announcer translates that much. A combat sports announcer does translate to that because it simulates and it enhances the fighting experience. This guy with an MMA background and the MMA voice, it really enhanced some of the matches. And the good matches that we had last night, whether it was the main event of Drew McIntyre versus Kofi Kingston or Xavier Woods versus Randy Orton, having a good commentator with a legitimate sporting background in terms of a combat sporting background really enhanced it last night. So I thought he did a great job. And I think there's room to grow for him there as well. I think he will improve. I think he did a good job last night, and I'm excited to see where he goes going forward. But that Raw team sounds good to me. That Raw team sounds good. So hopefully they've got someone that's going to stick around for a while because I think Jimmy Smith did a good job, and I think he will continue to do a good job. Speaking of Raw last night, Sheamus, we spoke about this. Sheamus reportedly suffered a broken nose during last night's edition of Raw. I mean, it was obvious that he did. It was obvious from the second that the injury happened. Now, during the show, Sheamus pulled double duty. He went back-to-back in non-title losses to Ricochet and Humberto Carrillo. During the Carrillo match, he took a stiff strike to the nose and was busted open the hard way. I mean, he was dripping blood significantly. He was dripping from those blood from the nose, which eventually ran down his chest. It was nasty. It was really nasty. Now, in an update from PW Insider, they've reported that the broken nose injury is 100% confirmed. Not that it took that much to guess. It was brutal. Now, word from Raw is that Sheamus will only miss in-ring time if WWE officials require him to sit out. Sheamus posted a bloody selfie after Raw and said, quote, "utter scumbaggery on WWE Raw." Now, this was a reference to the promo that he cut during Monday night's show. Yeah, I mean, it didn't take a genius to figure out that his nose was broken. When your nose is bleeding that significantly after a stiff forearm shot, it was broken. So we'll have to wait and see if it's really bad. Sometimes the thing is with broken noses, sometimes it's a case of they'll just set it and you'll be fine. It takes a little bit to recover. You might have to sit out. You might have to wear a mask. Who knows? Sometimes you don't have to miss anything. You can be back wrestling next week, who knows? Sometimes it can be more significant. Sometimes there can be complications. I hope not. I don't think so. He finished the match. Sometimes the worry is with broken noses that it can lead to concussions. I don't think he had a concussion last night. He seemed relatively fine. There hasn't been any reports about him suffering a concussion, so I don't think that's the case. He looked pretty pissed when it happened. He looked like he gave Humberto Carrillo a receipt pretty much straight away. And look, I know mistakes happen, but Sheamus is a physical guy. I don't think he necessarily cares too much about having his nose broken. He probably cares about being reckless and all that kind of stuff. He loves it. He loves it. So credit to him for finishing the match. I don't really care that much about the Ricochet and Humberto Carrillo stuff. I mean, the mid-card scene's doing fine on Raw. I guess it's what is a United States Championship feud. I wouldn't have Sheamus drop the US title anytime soon, though. I think he's doing excellent in his role as the United States Champion. So a bit of an update there. Looks like he does have a broken nose. Speaking of Raw, again, last night we had another Eva Marie vignette during last night's show, but Eva Marie took to Twitter during Raw and apparently dismissed a recent report about her return to WWE. Now, it was recently reported by Fightful Select that the working plan is not to have Eva Marie wrestle on Monday Night Raw, but use her as a vehicle to help get another female talent over. Now, there's no word yet on who that wrestler might be, but the report came after Eva revealed that she had been training under WWE Performance Center coach Norman Smiley. Now, in an update, Eva Marie retweeted her latest Raw vignette, which features footage of her training for an in-ring return, and captioned it with a comment on the recent report. She said, quote, "For all the clowns who said I'm not coming back to wrestle," and then obviously showed the video. So, I don't know if she's going to wrestle. She has been training for a while. I think she'll be better. I think WWE, frankly, when it comes to her return in terms of in-ring action, they've been quite smart. Because Eva Marie has been under WWE contract, or at least rumors and reports that she had signed with WWE go back to October last year. I mean, we're currently in June. She's been under contract for a long time, and she's been at the Performance Center since October last year. And look, if she's been training that whole time, one would hope she would be significantly better in the ring than she was previously. Now, is she going to be amazing or this real polished in-ring performer at the point that she debuts on Raw, or returns to Raw rather? I doubt it. I think it is smarter to have her as a manager primarily. But look, like most managers can eventually wrestle. In the same vein that MVP is a manager for Bobby Lashley, but once his knee injury heals up, he's going to get back to working matches again. And I think that's probably going to be the same for Eva Marie. I think primarily she'll be a manager, and primarily she'll be used to get a talent over. What talent that will be, I don't know. I really don't think she can be a babyface. Even though they're trying to position her as one, it looks like, I don't think she can be a babyface. I think in front of live crowds, if they try and position her as a babyface, she's dead in the water, frankly. But if they have her as a manager primarily to get a talent over as a heel, that could work. Depends on the talent, obviously, and depends on the star as to how much it will work. But I don't think it's going to be a case that she doesn't work or she doesn't wrestle. I think primarily she will be a manager. I think she's being economical with the truth here. And I think that economical with the truth aspect is, I'm going to be a manager, but I am still going to wrestle. That's why I'm training. And the report says that she's not going to be. She's just going to be a manager. I think she's being clever. She's being clever. That's what it is. So interesting to see that she addresses that. Molly Holly, WWE Hall of Famer Molly Holly, was backstage last night during Monday Night Raw from the Youngling Center in Tampa Bay, Florida. Reportedly, Molly Holly is backstage for a tryout as a producer. This is according to PW Insider. There is talk she may be rehired by the company to work behind the scenes. So, interesting. Very, very interesting. Holly, she recently worked as a trainer at Ken Anderson's The Academy Wrestling School in Minnesota, alongside former WWE star Shawn Daivari, but the school, of course, is on hiatus due to COVID-19. Molly Holly was inducted into the Hall of Fame earlier this year. I'm all for having more female talent in producer roles. We know that in recent years, they've tried to get more females on the creative team, specifically for female storylines, which I think is right. I think they need that because sometimes, look, obviously a man can write a storyline for a female and a female can write a storyline for men, all that kind of stuff. But I think, diversity is important, inclusion is important, and sometimes... what does Bruce Pritchard really know about writing storylines for females, modern day females? He doesn't. You need the female perspective on these things. Sasha Banks did a recent tweet talking about, again, these rumors of an all-female show and producing it and all that kind of stuff, which was what Mickie James wanted to do when she was in WWE. She got turned down because Evolution was the least watched pay-per-view of all time, which is BS. It is BS because That's not true. December to Dismember is the lowest watched pay-per-view of all time for WWE. On top of that, look at the YouTube metrics that some of the female matches do. You've got, Mae Young Classic matches that have got millions of views. I think one of the most viewed matches on YouTube for WWE is Nikki Bella versus Ronda Rousey from the Evolution pay-per-view. So can we just ignore this thing, or can we put this thing in the past of, women's wrestling doesn't draw, it's not popular? Because it's BS. It's BS. So hopefully Molly Holly, if she's good in her role, hopefully she does get hired. I think there need to be more female producers, especially for the female talent. So Molly Holly has a tremendous reputation in the industry, solid worker, but also dependable. Everyone says she's one of the most, nicest and most sweetheart people that's ever been in the pro wrestling industry. Sometimes people say that for an industry that's down and dirty as pro wrestling, Molly Holly kind of just didn't fit with that. But, former women's champion, Hall of Famer, would be great to see her working with the company again. Speaking of former women's champions, Becky Lynch. New photos of Becky Lynch have emerged, and she looks to be in phenomenal shape. Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Wrestling Academy revealed a new photo of Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins working out with a class from the school, and the photo went viral on Twitter due to fans commenting how great Becky Lynch looks like after giving birth just back in December. The group can be seen doing the Murph Challenge for the annual fundraiser for the LT Michael P. Murphy Memorial Scholarship Foundation. Now, on a related note, another Becky Lynch photo went a bit under the radar earlier this month. Seth Rollins' Dead Boys Fitness brand posted a photo of Lynch using an exercise ball. That photo can be seen online. Obviously, there's been lots of discussion recently about when Becky Lynch is going to return. There's been a rumor recently that she signed a new contract. Of course, she's been away from WWE television since she vacated the Raw Women's Championship in May of last year and gave birth in December. One would think, given that live fans are returning in July, given that SummerSlam in August is going to be taking place in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas on a Saturday in front of a stadium crowd, big event, fans are returning, all that kind of stuff. One would think Becky Lynch is probably about a month away or 6 weeks away or so from returning to WWE programming, I would think. I think with live fans returning, it's a matter of time. And look, physically, she looks to be in unbelievable shape. She looks physically ready to return. So I think this is just another indicator that she's nearing a WWE return. You would probably have known that anyway because of, as I mentioned, the return to touring and live fans and SummerSlam on the horizon. But she looks ready. And man, oh man, if she's going to be on Monday Night Raw, which she was before, she hasn't been drafted anywhere else. Although I don't think she was part of the draft last year. So technically, I suppose she could go to Raw or SmackDown. But man, is she needed on Raw. Because that show is painful to watch. That show last night was awful. So Becky Lynch looks ready to return and not a moment too soon. And finally, speaking of Raw superstars, Mansoor has spoken about his move to Monday Night Raw, and WWE officials reportedly want Mansoor to put on some size as they move forward with establishing his character on the Raw brand. Mansoor noted in his latest ArabNews.com column that WWE officials said they want him to put on some muscle mass. He's been working with a new personal trainer, the same one used by United States champion Sheamus, to help him bulk up. Now, it was noted that WWE officials are also working with Mansoor on his updated image, which includes a new theme song and new logos. This is what Mansoor had to say, quote, he said, every time you achieve a goal, you set a new one. That is something I really believe in because if you stop trying to improve, you will decline. Now I have established where I am. The most important thing is to establish who I am. We are working on my image, new music, new logos, etc. Because now I have been introduced, it's important to establish my character on the show. To do all of that on a huge stage such as Raw is a little intimidating, but very exciting. He continued, I'm growing, learning, and having these huge life experiences. It is bizarre to think about how crazy this journey has been. The transition from performing on NXT to performing on Raw or SmackDown is so big to even appear on the show once puts you in such an exclusive club, so I have to take it as a privilege. One of the things WWE said they would like to see me put on some muscle mass, and right now I'm working with Sheamus' personal trainer, who has been really helpful. I'm counting my macronutrients, calories, and recording all of my reps and sets in the gym. It's crazy how much difference writing stuff down and tracking it makes. So I mentioned this last night on the reaction stream we did for Raw. Mansoor was in a backstage segment with Mustafa Ali, and I mentioned at the time that, look, the guy is talented. He's got charisma. He can talk. He obviously can work as well. But the reason, let's face it, why he's on Raw at this point and why he's going to be heavily featured is because of the Saudi market. They want to have a homegrown talent. That's why he's been on all of those Saudi shows. And they want to feature him because they want to have this big homegrown talent, because the money-making spins that those events are, they want even more money. And having Mansoor headline and maybe be a star in WWE and be on those shows, the money WWE can make, they realize. I think it's interesting that they're telling him to put on more muscle mass. We're in 2021 and we're still telling talents, well, you maybe want to get a bit bigger. You maybe want to put on a little bit more muscle. Are we in the 1980s at this point, or the 1990s? I mean, man, some of the talents at this point, size has been less important than ever. And it's interesting that WWE's going back to the feeling of, well, you maybe need to get a bit bigger if you want to be a real star in this company. Interesting. But look, guys, nevertheless, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of the news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.